what was he producing? He was producing manuals on how to build your Soviet missile base on these tiny film cassettes. Now, we moved far beyond that film cassette, but at the time, these were pretty extraordinary. If you have a look at the Matchbox, you can see just how small they were. Okay, so it's easy, isn't it? We've got these wonderful photographs. We've got somebody who is passing over manuals on how to interpret the photographs. And no, it's not easy, because how do you pass over these Linux film cassettes? I mean, Moscow is the most intensively surveyed society in the history of Europe at that point, well, with the exception of Stalin's Russia. So it takes an extremely ingenious mind to think how to pass over these photographs safely. And this is where it was handed over. Spaso House, Moscow, not the American embassy, but it's the personal residence of the US ambassador. And if you're going to have a party, it's a pretty good place to have a party. So Penkovsky is invited to the 4th of July, Independence Day celebrations. And he's told to put the secret photographs on the mid-out camera, these little spools, into the system of the laboratory. Now, that may sound an odd thing to do, but actually putting secrets in the systems, I mean, don't necessarily do it, but next time you go into particularly an American restaurant, you can just lift the top of the system. It's extremely simple to hide something there. And probably nobody in this room, with a single exception of myself, and that was only once, has ever taken off at the top of the system to find some secret. It's still absolutely the best way of doing it. Now, Hugh Montgomery devised this, and this is a self-serving story, but it's the only self-serving story, so forgive me. Years later, Hugh Montgomery asked me to sign a book that I've written on how American presidents use intelligence. So I said, what shall I put in it? Shall I put your name? He said, no, put to the system kid. Was at that point a cowboy hero called the Cisco Kid. And so this was because he had devised a brilliantly simple method. All that Penkovsky has to do is go to the party, go to the restroom, take out the photos and put them in the system. Except that, unfortunately, Hugh had not checked out the system. And, so here is exactly what happened. I'm sorry to say, this was Russian plumbing and not American plumbing. So he stood on the lavatory seat and he just got his hand inside the system, and the lavatory seat gave way, and he put exactly one foot inside the toilet and the other foot outside. But they're trained to do this. No, they're not. But anyway, what you can't see on the left-hand side is that the wash basin is plumbed into the wall. So he stands on the wash basin, and this time he's got his hand absolutely around the waterproof magnetic packet of top secret microfilms, which is just as well, because at that point, the wash basin comes away from the wall. At that point, Hugh is a very sensible fellow, and in my view, decides he won't stay for the rest of the party. He is pretty bedraggled from when I was going. Sort of sidles out, except just as he's opening the front door, he hears somebody complain that somebody's just trashed the restaurant. But it wasn't only Moscow, because fortunately, although Penkovsky, this hotel has been smartened up, which means it's 10 times as expensive as it used to be, near Marble Arch. So Penkovsky was with a Soviet delegation that was going around British defense industry. So he came to stay there. And he was in on the 5th floor, but he came down to the 3rd floor, and who should he found in room 306? So then this group, this is the only photographs ever taken of MI6 and SIS officers who were about to debrief, interrogate somebody. That's because there were Americans there, because, you know, Americans are not as much as the Japanese like taking photographs. So this is the team. And the crucial one, I think, is second from the left. Harry Shogo, controller Soviet bloc. And there we are. There's Shogi, who is interrogating, debriefing Oleg Penkovsky back to camera. You know, not all that far from where we're sitting at the present time. Penkovsky was desperate to show where his real loyalty lay. He was a Soviet colonel, but he insisted that he just had to wear the uniform. And in that evening, while he was being debriefed, he insisted on wearing alternately the uniform of a US colonel on the left, and then a British colonel on the right. And the head of the only man ever to have headed both MI5 and SIS, to be white, the man on the left came to congratulate him that evening. But, this is very high risk, and the problem was when he went back to Moscow, he was shown this photo. What SIS had worked out was that, they obviously wouldn't put anybody in SIS who was followed wherever they went. They would get the wife of somebody in SIS, Janet Chisholm, one on the right, and she would wander around with her children and buggies and so on. And that was how they were collected. Unfortunately, they were following Janet Chisholm as well. So this is a surveillance photograph. If you look carefully, you can see that there's more than one camera involved in this. So there's Penkovsky entering Moscow block of flats in the Arbat district, which is the most colorful, interesting part of Moscow, I think, to leave a packet for Janet Chisholm. So it's photographed and it's photographed leaving. And Janet Chisholm is photographed and she's photographed leaving. So they caught him. Just on the eve of the Cuban Missile Crisis, there he is being tried and he's about to be sentenced to death in April 1963. But from the point of view of the Cuban Missile Crisis, he's already provided the intelligence. So they've nearly all been declassified now. Every report that you see on the Cuban Missile Crisis that is shown to Kennedy's advisors has in the top left-hand corner, iron bar. What does that mean? It means that it would have been impossible to interpret it without the documents provided by Penkovsky. So that's what it was like during the crisis. Kennedy was not always there, because if he had always been there, then the American people would have realized that the president had gone into hiding for 7 days and something serious had become. These are Kennedy's advisors in the cabinet room just off the Oval Office. And this is the kind of stuff they see. Every day they see the latest photos. Now, if you vaguely remember, well, the first photo that I showed, which was taken on the 14th of October, and all you can see was a little group of missiles, and there was one track. You can see how much it has changed in under 10 days. Now, here's the dog that doesn't bark. And I think it will be possible to say that it actually saved the world. The media didn't say anything. I mean, just imagine it nowadays. The most serious crisis in the history of the world, the most dangerous moment in British history, and the media says nothing. Well, that, I think, is the really crucial element. Why? Because Kennedy says any premature disclosure could precipitate a Soviet move, and it would have done, or panic the American public, and it would have done. And why is it so crucial? Because if Kennedy's advisors, ex-con, had to take a decision in 24 hours, the decision that they would have taken, and indeed they did provisionally take the decision, was to bomb the missile bases on Cuba, at which point the Russians would have only had two alternatives. One would be to say, oh, I'm terribly sorry, but those missiles there, I can see why you're annoyed. And the other is actually to strike back. We can dismiss the first option. And as Sherlock said, once you dismiss the impossible options, the ones that remain are the only possible ones. Followed by invasion of Cuba. Had there been an attack on the missile bases, they would have had to be an invasion of Cuba. And this is what one finds. So this is one of the documents of the period. Item 3, there was complete agreement that military action must include an invasion and occupation of Cuba. And if that had happened, the United Kingdom would have been reduced to a really rather large hole in the North Sea. I don't think there was any other. Now, it was incredibly good fortune that Lyndon Baines Johnson was not yet President of the United States. Well, it was only 13 months later that he was, because this is actually the anniversary of the day, 49th anniversary of Kennedy being assassinated. And if LBJ had already been president, I don't think we would be around then. What does he do within half an hour of being told the biggest secret in American history? And I don't think that's an exaggeration. Because he wishes to keep on the right side of Senator Richard Russell, the man on the right, the man that Kennedy called the chief of the war party. If you look at Carer's brilliant but somewhat myopic fourth volume of the biography of LBJ, he describes Russell as a man of monumental racism, which is actually true. He was also a man with a monumental loathing of the Soviet Union. So how irresponsible or how stupid would you have to be to tell him, well, you would actually have to be Lyndon Baines Johnson.